everyone, and welcome to Bruin Family Insights. It's a virtual discussion series brought to you by the UCLA Parent and Family Association. And it's really just meant to provide you all with some great information about how to best support your student and how to connect with the university as a parent or family member of a Bruin. My name is Kayla Albano, and I am the Associate Director of UCLA's Student Alumni Programs and Family Engagement. And I'm so excited to be your host tonight as we talk about ways for you to get involved as a parent or a family member and just learn about the resources and experiences that have helped our lovely panelists navigate their experiences as families on campus. So without further ado, I am excited to introduce all of our panelists who are all current or former Parents Council members at UCLA. So first we have with us Mary Von Basten, who is the mother of an out-of-state rising senior. We also have Greg Solkovitz, who is the father of another, actually they're not rising seniors anymore. They are seniors as of today. So we have two senior parents on with us. And then we have Julianne Valde-Lopez, who is the parent of a Bruin who has graduated, and she is a Bruin herself. So I want to start off by giving them some space to introduce themselves and tell a little bit about their experience as a parent at UCLA. So Greg, why don't we start with you? Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and your experience here?
Well, my name is Greg Solkovitz. My daughter, Victoria, is a political science, human biology major, dual major, and a minor in labor studies. I myself was a classroom teacher in high school for 28 years, then a teacher union officer for 6 years, and then spent the rest of my career working with low-performing schools, and just recently retired, so I'd have more time to help out here around UCLA.
Wonderful, thanks. Mary Von, why don't we go to you, and then Julianne will have you round us out.
Yes, my name is Mary Von Basten. I have a senior daughter named Claire, who is a political science major and who is now in the midst of sorority rush. So she's totally stressed and over the top crazy, but she's enjoying it nonetheless. We're from New York, Manhattan, so a long way away, but still feel like we're part of the family at UCLA. I'm an entertainment lawyer, and I'm kind of doing it part-time now, but had a long career at a company that is now based in Los Angeles.
All right, go for it, Julianne.
Hi, my name is Julianne Valde-Lopez. I am an alumna of UCLA. I graduated in 1989 with a BA in history, but I am a dentist. I'm also a parent of a UCLA graduate. My son graduated in 2017 with a BA in sociology, and I was on the Parents Council for 1 year. Unfortunately, I wish it was more. And currently, because I love UCLA so much, I am also the membership director of the UCLA Filipino Alumni Association.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for sharing. I'm excited to hear what your perspectives are going to be on tonight's conversation. But I do want to get us started by posing this question to you all. And it is, what has being a Bruin parent meant to you during your students' time at UCLA and beyond? So we'll kind of go round robin the same way we just did, give you all an opportunity to respond. So Greg, start us off, and then we can go down the line.
Well, for me, it's been interesting to watch Victoria have an experience almost every day, almost every week. It's a new experience at what's truly a world-class university, and I'm kind of in awe of some of the people she's had classes from. She had a class from Michael Dukakis, the former governor of Massachusetts. She had a class from a guy who helped write the Camp David Accords for peace in the Middle East. And it's been pretty awesome. And we've also enjoyed going to the sporting events here, even though it's not exactly been a great year for the football team. Hope springs eternal.
We turned it around on the football team. I think for me, it's been I feel surprisingly connected to the university. Even though we're far away, there's so much there's so much communication and there are so many resources. And it's really been meaningful to me to be connected to my daughter's journey through UCLA. And I think she's been happy that we could be connected, but of course not be hovering like no one wants their parents to be. So I think it's it's been really meaningful to me and my husband as well as to her.
For me, it was just, I was so happy that, my son went to UCLA, being an alumna of the school. I loved UCLA when I was a student, and with Zach being in school, now I was able to love it even more. I was excited because I knew UCLA would offer him a lot of professional and academic opportunities. And I was happy because I also knew that his degree would really help him.
Great, thanks everyone. All right, so to our viewers, we do have some questions that we're going to go through today, some that we have kind of crafted, and then we do have questions that were submitted ahead of time. But if you all as live viewers have any questions that you want to pose throughout our time together, there is a live chat box on YouTube. So if you are logged in, you can submit questions there as well, and we will incorporate those as we're able. But I'm going to kick things off with a question for you, Mary Vaughn. And I want to know, what was the biggest surprise about UCLA for you and or your student, and why? And then Greg and Julianne, if you have anything to add, you can jump in as well.
I think the biggest surprise to me was how a large public university can create an environment where there's community and there are smaller groups of students that can make it actually feel smaller and not overwhelming in size. And there are a variety of ways that happens, I think, either through, my daughter happened to join a sorority, but there are, I think, a lot of other ways that people connect and find their own small community, which makes the big university much more of a home to them.
I'd pretty much agree that UCLA is so supportive of students, and that was a huge surprise to me because it's a huge university, and there are thousands of students here, but it really supports students, and it is very helpful when the student gets involved in student activities. Like my daughter joined a sorority and she was involved in student government. But that being said, it's just amazing how supportive this university is of its students.
I have to say, when I went to school here, I don't think there was as many, it just didn't feel, it felt big, but I was happy with that. And I would agree that when Zach started at UCLA, I was really pleasantly surprised that there was a lot of opportunities to become a smaller community for him. So it was really, really nice.
So smaller community, even though UCLA is such a big place, is what I'm hearing, which is great. So all of you first-year parents, if you're watching, they might feel a little overwhelmed now, but your students will find their home on campus. So that's good to hear. So I want to follow up on that piece and focus more a little bit about resources. And Greg, I want to throw this to you. What was the most important on-campus resource for your student? Or what has been the most important resource to her?
Well, it's interesting because it's almost like in different phases of her time on campus. As she was getting ready to enter the campus, she spent a lot of time on the website, and she came in having done a matrix of all the different classes that would count for both of her majors and the whole bit, and she pulled that all off the website. Then she got involved in student government, and she got to know some of the members of the upper layers of administration here, and they became resources for her and some of the stuff she was trying to do. Then when she went to Washington, D.C. and studied in UCDC, there were other people. So I think that the point there is that there's not been any one resource, but there are tons of resources available for students. And I know Victoria was very adept at taking advantage of those various resources.
Got it. And then any one-off, Mary Vaughn or Julianne, that's right at the top of your head that you want to share?
Well, I think because our daughter got into the Greek life, she had some good resources there for the campus at her sorority. But I think she also subsequently had some very good experience with the Center for Accessible Education. And she also had some good experience with some of her professors in terms of just their accessibility and willingness to answer questions and talk to students one-on-one.
Yeah, that's definitely a great resource for our students, for sure.
I forgot parent and family programs were a great resource freshman year and since then.
Yeah, so for our families, if your student is trying to figure out where to go, that is actually a resource that we provide. Our Parent and Family Association has a helpline that you can call or email. So these folks have been involved as volunteers with our office, but it kind of all starts with figuring out that we can help you out as a family member. So definitely take advantage of that resource as well. So while we're on that topic, we actually got a couple of submitted questions ahead of time from Hong Y and Nancy S asking about UCLA health insurance. And there were a couple layers to the question, but they kind of wanted to know how health insurance works through the university. And for those who don't know, it's called UC SHIP, and it is part of the fees and tuition that you pay or your student pays when they come to the university. But the questions were kind of the pros and cons of having UCLA health insurance on top of your own health insurance. What are your thoughts on that? And then how does it affect an out-of-state student differently than an in-state student? So just kind of where are you on that as far as your family goes, and what advice can you give in that sense?
We did a lot of thinking about it because, you know, we're trying not to run the bill up, but we ultimately decided, even though we live locally, we're about 25 minutes from the school. And so we could get Victoria to doctor if she ever needed it. We decided that it would be a good idea to buy the supplemental insurance and have access to the Arthur Ashe Clinic. And indeed, there's been 3 different times where she got sick and she was able to just go to the clinic, see a doctor, be taken care of. And that was peace of mind for us. It gives her some sense of independence as well, because no college kid wants to be reliant on their parents for everything. And just anecdotally, she had a roommate her first year in the dorm who was an out-of-state student, and they didn't buy the supplemental insurance, and she got really sick. So my wife and I had to go pick her up and drive her about 12 miles through LA traffic to get her to the provider that was covered by her family's health insurance. And you know, it's unfortunate because it would have made much better sense if she'd have gone to the clinic on campus.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, we definitely have seen the value of signing up for Arthur Ashe, and my daughter has used it a few times when strep throat was going around freshman year, I think, and subsequent to that. But that was the insurance that we bought, and then she's still eligible to be on my husband's insurance, so we maintained that and didn't buy a bigger policy. I think his insurance is Anthem, so I think it's available in and around LA.
Mm-hmm. And I think there are actually a couple different ways that families can do the insurance piece. So I think the resource that your families have taken advantage of, I forget the exact name of it, but there's the supplemental piece that you were talking about is actually kind of a nominal fee that families can pay to get all of the services that are through ASH. And then there is the layer of the full UC SHIP insurance, which you can choose to waive or keep, usually at the beginning of each quarter. So the supplemental piece is Bruin Care. And then there's UC SHIP, which is the full insurance, which you can have on top of your health insurance as well. So there are a couple different ways to do it. And I think from what you all are saying, it's kind of dependent on your family situation and really what works best for you. But UC SHIP for the out-of-state family piece, I know that I think it's also Anthem. And so UC SHIP is actually connected to broader healthcare networks. And so if your student is an out-of-state student and they have UC SHIP, but they come home or they go on a trip or something, they can get access to services even beyond LA. So just really dependent, I think, on what you're looking for. All right, so thanks for those questions, Nancy and Hong. Julianne, we want to bring you into the mix here because I know that your son was a transfer student. And so how did that influence his approach to his time on campus and how he used his very short years here?
Well, what I saw with Zach was, coming from a community college, he kind of already decided what he was going to major in. And he was really already focused. So by the time he went to UCLA, it seemed like he just wanted to be done. So he was laser focused. He entered UCLA. He fulfilled all of his major requirements. He was able to graduate on time. So then he wanted to enjoy his life at UCLA. So all of a sudden the grades didn't matter anymore, it seemed, because he did graduate on time, but I remember he was just at UCLA. He joined a fraternity. He was very social. He went to a lot of events, did a lot of things, and but he was already focused. He knew what he was going to do. He knew he was going to graduate. And the nice thing about UCLA is with their transfer students, they treat them so well, which was a little different than when I went to UCLA. But at UCLA, they have their own dorm, and they have a ton of counselors, which Zachary took advantage of, and he was always talking to a counselor, it seemed. So he was on course. He did it, and he's out. So. Not in my house, but he did graduate. So that's a good thing. But,
baby steps. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. And if we do have transfer families out there watching, we do have a resource center specifically for transfer students. And I know they're doing a lot of welcome activities right now, and their space is so welcoming. So definitely encourage your student to take advantage of that. So Greg, I want to pose this question to you. So were there any situations in Victoria's experience where her expectations didn't really meet the reality of her experience? And if so, can you just share a little bit about what that was and how you all navigated that as a family?
Well, first of all, Victoria's managed to navigate through most of the stuff herself, dealing with the bureaucracy, and a large university does have a bureaucracy. She in particular, she was very good at getting a number of scholarships, and getting those scholarships credited to her account required a number of trips to the whichever administration building it was and talking to this person and that person. And that pretty much bothered her. And then second, she ran for student body office, and there was a false accusation made against her during the campaign. And the process by which it was investigated and she was exonerated was, I thought, very sketchy. And, she survived it, but it was certainly an eye-opening experience for her. And, that disappointed her. On the other hand, she's also attended a number of events with the chancellor and is on first name basis with her. And she's, very positive about that. So it's like anything else in life, you have situations come up and you've got to deal with them, and that's part of the growing experience. And she's loath to call mom and dad and say, can you help me with this, if she could avoid it. So she was able to take care of it mostly herself.
Great. So like you said, just learning to handle that life expectations and reality in life are not always going to be the same thing. I love it. Thank you for sharing. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about first year of college and those challenges. And so Mary Vaughn, I wanted to ask you, what was your student's most significant challenge during that first year? And what did that look like for her or your family?
Well, she had a roommate challenge. She was in a 3 in Hedrick Summit, and one of the roommates was so challenging to live with due to her social activities that it became a big problem. And so she didn't even tell us about it until Thanksgiving. And by that time, she was well into managing it with the RAs and the director of residence. So she, it was not a great situation to start out with as in college, but she had the wherewithal, and her other roommate had the wherewithal to get the right people involved and to get it solved. I was proud of her for that. We didn't even know about it. So.
That's awesome. I think so many times from the family support side of things, we hear families calling us, obviously to help direct their student to the right space, but a lot of it is really encouraging students to advocate for themselves. So I love hearing that she was able to go to the staff and work on that. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So families at home, ask your student, have they talked to their RA? Have they talked to the resident director? Have they connected with resources to kind of gauge how far they've gotten in trying to solve the problem as well? And so we're still going to do some of that challenge piece, but we actually have a submitted question from Cynthia F. And it's a little broader. She asks, what can I do as a parent to help my student transition to college life and or living on campus? So I'm going to leave that kind of broadly to you all, whoever wants to jump in, but what advice can they give now or support can they give now to make that a little easier if they're a first year parent?
I asked Victoria that question, and she said that for a lot of her colleagues, the biggest transition has been going to the quarter system where it's so intense. And she says learning to pace is very, very important. So it could be that families will want to check in at first, and especially in the first quarter, and see how their students are doing, make sure they're not overly stressing. But my daughter emphasized that she came from a traditional semester program in her high school, and even though it was rigorous, there was a tremendous challenge to getting into the pace of you start a class and as soon as you're into it, it's over. So that was her advice when I asked her the question.
UCLA, though, for the freshman year, do they not allow like the maximum amount of units to take nowadays? This is what I heard, that instead of 4 classes, like a full load, they will only allow you as freshmen to take just 3. Is that right?
I think it's something that they encourage, but I don't know that it's an expectation. But that is perhaps something definitely to think about as the student's class load for sure.
Yeah, I do remember one of the welcoming events, and the suggestion by the professor was don't take a full load. Get your feet, your bearings, just take it easy, go slow.
And don't be afraid to take some easy classes. I mean, Victoria found a couple classes that were what she considers easier the first year, so that she could kind of get used to university life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we were advised strongly in orientation to take only 3 classes the first quarter at least, and then see how it went. And I think that's been for our daughter anyway, the right track. It has been 3 classes per quarter. And we'll still graduate on time.
Yay.
Yeah, the ever looming graduation date, right? Trying to figure that one out. Okay, well, thank you all for your perspectives on that one. We have kind of a fun one now from Nancy S. She wants to know, what do you wish someone told you during your first year as a UCLA parent? Is there anything maybe that's related to kind of what surprised you as well, but what do you wish somebody had told you? Or if you could have like a fairy godmother going in that gave you that advice, what would it be?
I think I wish somebody would have told me not to stress about the size of the university, which I did a little bit, but then my pleasant surprise was that the university wasn't so big when you had lots of different communities. So I think that's something that a lot of parents probably worry about, especially if their student went to a small school, as my daughter did. She had a class of 50 and then went to UCLA. So it was, I think that was something that if I would have known, I wouldn't have stressed about it for a minute.
Okay. Good, Greg and Julianne, anything to add?
I just think how fast they become independent. I mean, I don't know what my expectations were because I'm not a big believer in quote unquote helicopter parenting. On the other hand, the first quarter, because we lived relatively close to home, she'd come home about every 5 weeks, the first quarter. The next quarter was a couple times. And then past the second quarter, she was happy to be on campus full time and had much less time for the parents, which is good.
Yeah. That's what my parents have said way back when I was in school too. You disappeared after a while. And so I think we all have that, right? Like once we get comfortable in a space, whether we're college students or adults or whatever it might be, you just jump in and you make your own community and figure it out. It's great. All right. So Julianne, having been here in multiple capacities, which UCLA event has been your or your students' favorite to attend and why?
For me, hands down, it's the Bruin family weekend, the homecoming weekend. Yeah, I love that weekend. And really it's just because I can go to a class, quote unquote, and see what they're doing, eat the good food, being in an atmosphere of really strong Bruin spirit. So I love that weekend. So I don't remember that was done in the 80s when I graduated. So I really enjoy that. That's my favorite. As for Zach, I'd probably, I didn't ask him any of these questions, to tell you the truth, but I think it probably would be all the fraternity stuff that he went. I think those are probably his fun things.
Yeah. So Bruin Family Weekend, for those who don't know, registration just opened. You can find out more at bruinfamilyweekend.ucla.edu. And that is taking place October 25th through the 27th this year. And we will get that link out to all of you who are watching live as well in the chat box. So it is a really fun weekend. And I'm glad that you still think fondly of it, Julian.
I do.
Great. All right, so I want to ask you all kind of your own experiences on these next couple of questions. I'm going to put them, pair them with a live question or a submitted question that we got. So Yeti O wanted to know how new parents can get involved. And then I want to tack on to that, why was it important to you to be involved as a parent at UCLA? So how can you get involved and why was it important to you to do so? And Mary Vaughn, why don't we start with you?
Okay, well, it was important to me being across the country from my daughter to try to stay connected to where she was spending, or to be connected to where she was spending all of her time. I think it helped me figure out a little bit of what her experience was, and that was important. I think the how to is there are multiple ways, and parent volunteering through the Parent and Family Association. There are lots of opportunities to sign up for volunteering on campus and also out of state for events that are in your area. And then there is the Parents Council, of which we are all members or have been members. And it is kind of the, the smaller group of parents who are, taking a deeper dive into parent involvement. And I've been on, this is my third year, and I found it to be a great experience connecting with other parents and also doing things that benefit the university. So that's my story.
Greg?
Well, I've been involved in Victoria's school at every level. And so when she entered college and I found that there was the opportunity to get involved in Parents Council, I just naturally applied for it and happily was accepted for it. And it's the idea of trying to give back to the school because so many parents just send their kids off to school and kind of, wash their hands of it and walk away. And I think that it's important for schools to have the support of parents. And in this case, I feel as being a member of the Parent Council, I'm like one of 170 or 180 parents who, one, have an entree into the bureaucracy, but more importantly, I also see myself as sort of being a voice for parents. So there are times where I'll kind of be a nudge and asking about, well, has this been done or has that been done? And then just to give you an advantage of the benefit, when my daughter was a sophomore, I was bugging her to get a flu shot, and she came back to me and said, "Oh, I can't find where it is here, Daddy." So I sent an email over to the staff here. They sent me the flyer. And so I sent it to my daughter and said, "No excuses, go get your flu shot." And it's just an example of having the entree into the bureaucracy. And then the flip side is they know, the staff here knows that if there's anything I can do to help them out, I'll be there to help them out, because, you know, it's a two-way street, and there's some marvelous organizations. We have the Bruin Guardian Scholars that deals with kids who are foster kids and at-risk students. So I spend time working with that. I donate food to the Bruin Pantry because food insecurity is a major issue for a lot of the students here on this campus. And therefore, I'm able to try to make a dent in that. So again, it's just giving back to the university. It's giving so much to Victoria.
Hey, Julianne, anything else to add?
Just quickly, you know, I was just so happy that Zach was at UCLA. I was an alumni. I looked for something that I could do, so that, because I loved UCLA so much. And then when I found out about Parents Council, I quickly signed up. And as Greg said, it really gave us an entree into the bureaucracy of UCLA, and I better understood UCLA's position on its own and what it stood for, and it gave me a better perspective on things being on Parents Council, and I felt great to be giving back through volunteering, lots of projects. So it was really, really great to be involved that way.
Wonderful. So if you're interested in Parents Council, applications will open for that in April of 2020 for the next academic year. We do them on a yearly cycle. So it'll open in April. We'll be posting about it all over our social media. Emails will go out about it. But if you are interested in volunteering now, we do have a general parent volunteer group where you just get an email once a month with opportunities that are both local to campus, but also all across the world. So there will be links for that in the chat box as well. Thank you all for sharing. All right, so we want to talk a little bit about senior year. So I'm going to direct this toward Mary Vaughn and Greg. As your student starts their senior year, what are they focusing on most, and what are kind of their plans? And with that, Lucy H. is curious about how housing went for you all with senior year, and any challenges or advice you have on that. So what are they focusing on, and how did you handle housing?
Well, she's focusing on finishing up her requirements for her political science major and her minor in film and television and digital media. But she also has an internship, which will be a couple days a week at one of the big Hollywood entertainment agencies. And she's excited about that. And I think by winter quarter, she will really be turning her attention to getting that first job when she graduates. And one parent said to me, and you know, all the parents should be aware that UCLA students sometimes can be at a disadvantage because of the quarter system, in that they finish later, sometimes much later than students who have the semester system. So you kind of got to get out there and hustle early on, so you're not left behind on the job front. So that's where she's going. And then she's finishing sorority rush this week and taking a big sigh of relief.
Greg?
Victoria is totally and completely stressing about what kind of job she's going to get coming out of school. She's finished one of her majors. She's close to finishing the other major in her minor. So she's really worried. And, you know, kids who come to UCLA are very high achievers. You don't see any dummies on this campus, and it's a very competitive campus. So one of the things I'm working with her on right now is not putting so much pressure. But she explained to me, as Maribon just indicated, she goes, "Daddy, I've got to get my applications in by the end of this year because they're hiring. And if I wait, there'll be nothing." So she's definitely feeling that pressure. And, you know, as much as I, as the father, try to get her to take it easy, I'm old and I don't know anything. So therefore, I just have to sit back and be supportive. As far as the housing goes, it was kind of a nice transition. Her first year, she lived in a dorm with 2 roommates. Very good experience. By the way, UCLA has the second best food in the nation, so the kids eat really well when in the dorm. And then her second year, she had joined a sorority. Her first year, she lived in the sorority. Her second year, it was less expensive than the dorm, and it was an experience with all of her friends. And then last year, she moved with some of her sorority sisters into a apartment that's literally a block and a half from campus. They're there again this year. They're incredibly pricey, the apartments. What they're paying individually for a 2-bedroom apartment with 5 people in it's pretty crazy, but she's enjoying it, and she's close to campus, but she's also away from campus. She's still involved in her sorority, so she's got Rush going on this week. She's got student government activities, but it's been nice to watch how she's gone through the transition to housing, and I was really surprised to see that she saved money by living in the sorority house. That kind of surprised me.
We didn't plan this, but my daughter pretty much tracked exactly what Greg's daughter Victoria did. 1 year in the sorority house and 2 years off campus in an apartment. And I don't know, Kayla, I remember hearing at one point that housing on campus was guaranteed for a certain period of time, but I don't know if that was just 3 years or if it's all 4 years. Don't know.
We will check in on that. I believe it's the first year. I'm not sure past that, but we're gonna do a little digging, and we'll circle back to that in just a second. But thank you.
Okay.
We'll check in. But yeah, thank you for all of that. It sounds like their senior years are shaping up to be very exciting. And for those who are telling their students that they need to start their job search right now, if they are a senior, they have a little bit of time. It's definitely what was mentioned about the quarter system versus semester system and ending is totally true. But we've also had students who worked in our office who they got a job before graduation even happened and they were ready to go. So I think if you follow your student follows that advice about being persistent, they will be good to go. Okay, so for freshmen, we'll circle back on that housing piece. For freshmen, housing is guaranteed, you're right, Mary Vaughn, for the first 3 years and for 1 year as a transfer student. So 3 years if you're coming in as a freshman, 1 year as a transfer student. So thank you for bringing that up. All right. So Sunitha A is curious about just stress and safety concerns on campus. So can any of you speak to any concerns that you had about that at any point during your students' UCLA experience, and maybe how you feel about it now, or if you're feeling a little better or something like that. So just stress and safety concerns. How were you with that as a parent? And Julianne, do you have anything you want to jump in on? Especially coming from that transfer perspective, it's a little different.
It is a little different, but then, I have a son versus a daughter. So I wasn't too stressed about his safety, if that makes sense. I think if I had a daughter there, because of the largeness of the campus and all of that, I would have been a little bit more concerned. But then also, I think what you learn at orientation too is they do have those resources. Don't you have like vans that you can take at night to get to the dorms? You can have, I guess you can call someone to walk you home. So that's really good. And then also just getting into the dorms with all the ID that you need and all of that, that's pretty impressive. So that wasn't really too much of my concern, although, I'm going to mention that shooting incident at UCLA and the fact that when that happened and, we were concerned as parents, and then knowing that there was a lockdown for the dorm people. And so that was good to know that people were safe, that the students were safe on campus during that shooting incident. Maybe there was a little, stress there too, but yeah, I was okay with that. That was good.
Thanks, Greg. Mary Vaughn?
Yeah, I think my concern wasn't about safety, even though I have a daughter, because we did go to the orientation and hear from the campus police and everything that they do along the lines you just said, Julianne. And I think she's always felt safe. And of course, they all travel in packs, so that's helpful as well. But I think I've also heard from another Parents Council member, which I didn't know about till this year, that there's a Bruin Safe app, which updates you to when anything major happens on, campus or threatens the campus, like the fires. I assume if there's an earthquake or something like that, we can go on those apps and see what the university is doing and how to handle it. But I think the thing I worried about most was how she was going to be being far from home, how she was going to feel. And she I think I have had one phone call in 4 years that she was a little homesick. So I consider that a pretty good sign of how much she loves it there.
And I can say that one of the reasons that Victoria chose UCLA, because she was accepted a number of schools and visited them, was that she felt safe on this campus. On the other hand, I've emphasized to her to have common sense, which is you don't walk anywhere by yourself, after 8 or 9 o'clock at night.
Yep.
And that's just common sense. I would tell that to anybody anywheres. Be hyper vigilant about what's going on around you. Don't be dumb and have headphones playing while you're walking along. But in terms of safety, yeah, there are glitches in terms of information, because it's a big institution, and responding to things is difficult. But it's no more difficult than it be for the staff here as well. And I know the university is committed to providing a safe environment for the staff and for the students. So I don't think my daughter's ever felt unsafe on campus, and my wife and I have lost no sleep ever about whether Victoria is safe or not on the campus. And I would I would have you urge your new college students to be aware of their surroundings and to be safe like they would be anywhere, because we live in a world where, unfortunately, not everyone thinks positive thoughts or does positive things. So we can't live in fear, but on the other hand, we can't be oblivious to it either.
Definitely. Thank you. All right, Mary Vaughn, I want to talk a little bit about the out-of-state family perspective for any of our folks who are watching from other parts of the country or the world. What were the hardest parts for you adjusting to this whole experience as an out-of-state family, and not just one state over, but across the country? What did that look like for you?
Well, I think the part that first felt difficult was that she couldn't just come home for a weekend to, get some mother and father love and get her laundry done. And she really had to kind of commit to being on campus at least till Thanksgiving. And I don't think, with the one exception I spoke of, I don't think she had too hard a time with that. There always seemed to be friends around on some weekends. Some kids would go home, but there would be other kids around. So it wasn't that difficult in terms of how it actually worked out. It's always more like what you fear that doesn't really happen. So, and I was glad about that. But that was a little tough when we felt sometimes it would be nice for her to be able to come home for the weekend.
All right. And then kind of to follow up on that, Elizabeth F. And Nancy S. had some more specific questions about that out-of-state perspective. Were there any especially useful resources or services for your student, or have there been? And then what are some affordable places to stay while visiting, or just options in general?
Well, I think one of the questions was also about, storage on campus, which there isn't any, but a lot of students navigate that by sharing a storage space, so they don't they can leave things that they need to leave in Los Angeles nearby. I know my daughter used one of those services after her freshman year, and sometimes you can do it by yourself, or you can share with someone else. And I think that's worked out very well. It's not that expensive, and you certainly don't want to get into the business of sending stuff back and forth that you don't need to send back and forth. So I think the other thing about the hotels, if I would commend people to the family weekend website, where the Bruin Family Weekend, because there's a list of a bunch of hotels which do on these kind of occasions give discounts. We happen to have a personal favorite that we've used, the Palomar on Wilshire. But I've heard that there are others that people have been very satisfied with. And I also think Airbnb should not be forgotten, because I think there are Airbnbs in Westwood, which are close to the campus. But I think you can find on that list of hotels a lot of possibilities and choices and price ranges. There's a Holiday Inn Express. There's, the W Hotel. So that's kind of a range for people who need to get hotel accommodations, but you've got to get them early for Bruin Family Weekend.
Bruin Family Weekend, graduation.
Yeah.
We get people starting to call about that to our office like a year in advance. So you can get those dates on the website. I believe they do have them a couple years out. So folks, for graduation weekend, definitely start planning early. But that's a great resource to mention. It's the accommodations page on the Bruin Family Weekend website. I was actually just on it today, and it's like 15 places.
Oh yeah, there are a lot of choices, and I would imagine, of course, the farther away from campus you are, the less expensive it is. At least I would imagine that's the case. But we've always liked to stay relatively close, which is why we have stayed at the Palomar and have it booked for graduation.
Yeah. So we are getting down to our last few minutes together, and I have a couple questions left. So we are going to wrap up with these. But Julianne, I wanted to ask you about how Zach's time at UCLA and degree have impacted his post-graduation experience. What has that looked like for him?
Well, Zach, primarily he's gained so many connections through being in the frat and making friends at the dorms. I think past college, those connections have really given him like the emotional support, friendships, and then professionally speaking, it's just he uses his degree as, a sign of credibility. I mean, you've got a UCLA degree. People, his clients, they've become impressed by that, I have to say. And it's really been a positive thing for him. And he is just so over the moon that the other month he said, "Mom, I am so glad I went to UCLA." He did get into other colleges. He got some scholarships too, but I mean, he just thought UCLA was great. He made a lot of connections. He has his degree. So that's it.
So even the degree in and of itself, just having that, the credibility of that has been helpful to him.
Oh yeah.
Wonderful. All right. So I kind of want to pose this last question to you all. And I want to know, what advice would you give family members who may be trying to find the balance between supporting their students and giving them space to navigate college independently? So how has that looked for you, and what would you say about that? And Greg, why don't we start with you?
Well, it'd be interesting to see what Victoria's answer would be on this as well. But what I've tried to do is just let her understand that, that I'm there and I'm interested in what's going on. I'm on campus a lot because of Parents Council, which at first annoyed her to no end, but she's now kind of accepted the fact that, just because I'm on campus, she doesn't have to see me and vice versa. I text her frequently, but I don't text her expecting responses. I just text her to say hi and, hope you had a good day or whatever, just to remind her that I'm there. But otherwise, I pretty much let her be, because, she could have chosen to go to University of Minnesota and I wouldn't see her at all and I wouldn't be close. And I figure that when she really needs us, she'll let us know. Sorry.
Yeah, I think the not being a helicopter parent is something that we all know we should not. We know we shouldn't do it, but I think sometimes it's tempting. But I think, as Greg said, you can just, if you stay connected by whatever means, social media, however you like to communicate, and in my daughter's case, it's text. But I think you can just you can be there for them, but always urge them, as I think someone else already said, maybe it was you, Greg, that try to use the resources. Maybe it was you, Kayla. Use the resources of the university and try to get them and try to work it out yourself, because that's part of maturing and that's part of being independent. So I think that's the way I see it.
My problem was, being an alumna, I just wanted him to do everything. So I kept telling him, you should join this. You should do that. You should go do education abroad program, because I did that. And don't join the frats. What are you doing? What are you thinking? And so my husband had to tell me, you're being a helicopter parent. And I'm like, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. But looking back, now I wholeheartedly say, do not let them have their own space. Let them make their own mistakes. Let them make their own decisions. And then if they want your advice, they'll come to you. Let them have their own space. Just and then be ready when they need help, and you'll be there, and they'll have a good experience.
And I think one thing we always tell families is, like Mary Vaughn mentioned, knowing those resources, but know that they are available at every point of your student's experience. There are resources just for students transitioning to the university, whether they're a freshman or a transfer student. There are resources for them specifically related to whatever they're studying. And then there are also resources for them once they are out of the university. The Alumni Association has plenty of ways for them to stay connected, and Julianne has mentioned how she is involved. There are networks they can get connected to based on where they are and what their interests are. We have UCLA One, which is actually a really great career resource for students, no matter what part of their journey they are in. It's kind of like UCLA's very own LinkedIn. And they can get connected to alumni, to mentors, to other students, and when they're out of school, to other professionals. And so we really seek to provide that support even beyond being at UCLA. And if you can get to know those resources, then your student will become comfortable with them as well. And you can kind of be their guide as they're going through the experience. So thank you all for sharing that. So we are at time, and I know we just talked a little bit about advice, but I want to ask just kind of our overall conversation over the past almost an hour or so. What is one key takeaway that you would want a family member to have after this conversation, whether it's about their student's experience or being involved as a family member? What's kind of the sound bite that you would want them to have? And I think we can go Greg, Mary Vaughn, Julianne, if you want to just go in that order, given your thoughts.
I would urge your son or daughter to take advantage of the resources on campus, and that's both the positive, the Greek system, the athletics, going and watching games, being involved in clubs and activities, but also to be aware that if they're in crisis, there's also resources on campus to help them with that. Take advantage of the resources. Don't be embarrassed about it. This university wants every student to succeed and graduate, and the resources are there for them to use. I'm sorry, that was a long soundbite.
Well, I guess the other thing to add to what Greg said, all of which I agree with, is that parents should really take advantage of the resource of Kayla and the other people on the staff of the Parent and Family Association. They have been extremely helpful to me in every single year on one subject or another. And they're there to help you out with all manner of questions. So please, I just urge you to talk to them, email them, they're very responsive, and they understand that sometimes, you're just you just don't know where to go with the questions. So they try to help in any way they can.
Yeah, what I wrote down, I just said, let your child make a lot of his or her own decisions and make use of the resources. So that is it.
Great. Straight and to the point. Let them do their thing. Well, Mary Vaughn, Greg, Julianne, I cannot thank you enough for sharing your experience with us. And also thanks to your students for allowing you to share about their experience on their behalf as well. I know that our Bruin families really appreciate you taking the time to do this, and so do we. So thank you to everyone for joining, to our panelists for sharing just such great information on not only what to expect from the student experience, but also how families can be a part of UCLA and have their own Bruin experience as well. We hope that you all enjoyed the conversation tonight. We thank you for participating, and we thank those of you who submitted questions and really engaged with us in that way. If you did submit a question to us for this conversation and it wasn't addressed tonight, our team will follow up with a response in the coming week or so. But the recorded version of this webinar will be available on YouTube in the next couple of days as well. Actually, it will probably be this evening. It'll be up. So that will be available to you if you want to go back and watch it or share it with someone else. But please do know that if you did pre-register for this discussion, your feedback is really important to us, and you'll be receiving a email tomorrow that's just kind of a follow-up, giving you the recording link and also asking you to just fill out a quick survey about the discussion. So if you are able to do that, we would really appreciate it. But other than that, we just ask you to stay tuned for more information on the next installment of Bruin Family Insights, which will be coming in December of this year. But you can prepare for the academic year and getting to know UCLA more by watching all of our previous installments of Bruin Family Insights at parents.ucla.edu. And you can also find a ton of the resources that we talked about today and others that will be helpful to your family right on that website. And again, that's parents.ucla.edu. But otherwise, we look forward to chatting with you all again. Thank you to our panelists. We look forward to seeing you all on campus soon. And we hope you all have a wonderful evening, and go Bruins.